Test your might.
Get over here. For someone like me who didn't really grow up playing that much video games, almost everybody knew what Mortal Kombat is. It is that one badass fighting martial arts video game that your mom didn't want you to play, but you still played it behind their backs just because it was just that damn awesome. From its iconic techno syndrome score, the violent and gory fatalities, to picking fan favorites like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, the list goes on and on. Of course, it was then in 1995 when the first ever live-action Mortal Kombat was released. Which it really wasn't that much of a success, being limited to a PG-13 film. It did have some cheesy aspects to it, but over time, retrospectively, did gain a cult following. But of course, this movie review, that's for another time. Now imagine if we could have had a Mortal Kombat movie that probably took itself a little bit more seriously, had a bigger budget and a better production, and imagine also it could have had that R rating that stayed true to the source material. Well, enter 2021 with James Wan entering as the main producer, we got the new rebooted Mortal Kombat. If you've been following me since the pandemic days, you guys probably remember that this was actually in one of my most top 10 anticipated films of that year. Of course, with the entire world on lockdown and we were just stuck inside our homes, they decided that from Warner Brothers that they were going to release the film simultaneously on HBO Max with the theatrical release. With the new sequel out in theaters right now, then what better time than to start talking about the 2021 film right now? And also just to let everybody know, there will be spoilers throughout this review, so just a heads up. So the film is centered around Cole Young, a washed-up MMA fighter who has been selected alongside Earth's best fighters to compete in a martial arts tournament for the sake of saving their world and their universe. It's been 5 years since I've actually seen this film, and I remember the first time watching it, I was very utterly disappointed, but then rewatching it recently, there are just some things that haven't really changed, and then there's some stuff that has, and I'll get to that in a bit. But just to let you know, like for starters, the first 13 minutes, yes, I actually did keep track of the first 13 minutes, and you'll know in a bit, it's actually pretty damn good. I really like how they set up the old classic Japan setting and gives the backstory of Scorpion and his soon-to-be rivalry with Sub-Zero. It's a good old tale of tragedy and revenge. The action sequences are great. We finally get a little bit of some of that bloody moments that fans have been asking for. And the fighting style actually does seem pretty accurate to what I've seen from some video games. And then you cut to that main title, which shows Mortal Kombat. So far, so good. But like I said, that was the only first 13 minutes. It's then when we start the story centered around Cole Young in present day. And then we later find out throughout the film that he's actually a descendant of Scorpion. But even worse, he's not even a video game character from the actual series. And the actual game characters are more sidelined to a supporting role. Really? They couldn't have done like Liu Kang, Scorpion, or Johnny Cage. I mean, these characters are literally known to be, at least from what I'm aware of, they're at least known to be the main characters and the whole essential to the story plot. It's almost like if you had a Batman film where some random citizen from Gotham was the main character and Batman was sidelined in his own movie. Just like this film. Why'd they even do that? My guess from what I'm thinking is that they try to use the Cole Young character as the audience's point of view from a lot of people who don't have any familiarity with the Mortal Kombat lore, or at least some ideas about it. And that I get on paper, because even for me who doesn't know that much about the lore, but in this film it feels like as though that the studio and the creative team are really pretty much insulting our intelligence, because they feel like as though that we the audiences are not capable of understanding an open world lore without having an outside source, which I beg to differ. Because The Lord of the Rings was filled with rich and layered world building of Middle Earth, and we saw the whole story conflict through the eyes of Frodo Baggins. And that's not also just that, we also had like the X-Men films from the 2000s, and how we saw how the world perceived mutants and how the team was introduced through Rogue's eyes. Yet both of those characters were actually shown from their original source material, and yet people were just fine with it. Point is, I just think that that was Mortal Kombat's biggest screw up on this film. Other things that I can really criticize about this film is just how weak and flat the dialogue is throughout this entire film. I get it, it is a Mortal Kombat franchise. No one is ever going to come in here and expect like some kind of Shakespearean artistic style dialogue. They're pretty much just here for the action and at least some decent story. But the least that they could have done is at least flesh out some characters to the point that we can actually start caring about them and that it has a little bit of an emotional weight, because most of the characters that we actually come to see, we really have no connection to them, whether it's the good guys or bad guys. The actors for sure are giving their full 100% effort to make sure that these characters' personalities are on point, and they actually do deliver on that, which I do appreciate. There is a higher quality in production. The costume designs are very much video game accurate. While not all the CGI holds up, there are some details where it does actually look pretty impressive. I'll give that. And trust me, we have finally gotten those bloody fatalities that fans have been craving for all these years. It takes a little bit of time to get into it, and trust me, that's one of my biggest gripes on the film. Like, it does take a little bit too long to where we want to see the gore, but when it actually finally does come, it's a bloody satisfaction. I think one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is actually when Scorpion returns in the third act and has a one-on-one fight with Sub-Zero, and both of them are in full costume. That was actually pretty awesome. And that was unfortunately one of the very few times in the film where I felt like as though it felt like an actual true Mortal Kombat film. Also, the fight doesn't really last that much long, and I think what also just makes it awkward about this movie is just that there's actually no tournament fights. It's just basically everyone's just fighting anywhere. Almost like you can just say it's really just a street fight. Oh, I'm not gonna say that. Overall, I really did have mixed feelings about this film still. It's really nothing to brag about, and honestly, when I was just done watching it, it's actually pretty forgettable the next day. Like what I'm about to mention right now, video game movies can be a little bit tricky when you're trying to tell a story in video games, but they don't always translate to movies. Some have good successes and some don't. Although I do see a lot of potential that they could fix upon in other future installments. And I get why fans love this franchise. For my final score, I'm gonna give the 2021 Mortal Kombat a 5 out of 10. I didn't actually love it. It's not a terrible film either. It's just, like I said, it's just a mixed bag. But then again, unless you're one of those die-hard fans of this franchise, I just think that, yeah, you're not going to remember this movie the next day. However, with the sequel out now starring Carl Urban as Johnny Cage, maybe, just maybe, they might be able to learn their first mistakes from the first film, pivot, and make a little bit of creative decisions to make sure that they get that flawless victory for the fans.